Today we are going to see how to configure authoritative zone, delegation zone, forward zone and a stub zone. We have configured two virtual instances of Infoblox and iOS. Let's note down the IP address and the FQDN of both servers. Okay, we just logged into the both the appliances, and let us pull out this FQDN for the servers. In our case, we are assuming DNS2 as the primary server, and the other server's FQDN is dns1.infoblox.2. So it is DNS2 and this one is DNS1. Okay, first thing first, we are going to configure this appliances as DNS servers. So what we need to do is enable the DNS service. Go to members, DNS members, and the DNS status is showing as not running. So let's select it and then click start. And do the same on other device also. Okay. This will take a while, so we are giving some time for this, and then a refresh. Okay, it is running here and it is not yet started. Okay, the DNS service is enabled in both servers. So next we are going to configure authoritative zone. What is authoritative zone? An authoritative zone, also known as authoritative DNS zone or primary DNS zone, is a section of the domain name system DNS that contains the official and up-to-date records for a particular domain. It is responsible for providing the authoritative answer to DNS queries for that domain. In short, authoritative zone will be holding all the answers for the queries. The final answer will be inside the authoritative zone, or the authoritative servers will be having the website's address or a domain's address that we are looking for, or the DNS query is looking for. So configuring authoritative zone means that server is responsible to give the correct answer for a query. So let us create a authoritative zone. Go to data management, DNS, then zone. We are going to create a authoritative zone. Authoritative, click the plus icon and the drop down, then select authoritative zone. Okay, authoritative forward mapping zone, select the first item, then click next, then give it a name. We are naming it as abc.com, abc.com, then click next. We are selecting the third option. We will be discussing this server group option later, and we are selecting the third option. Since this one is a grid, standalone grid, as we added grid license to this appliance, so it is acting as a standalone grid. So we are selecting grid primary as the name server. It will populate the name server FQDN. Simply click add and save and close. Okay, after making any changes in the configuration, the appliance will be prompted to restart. Simply click restart to complete the changes or commit the changes. Okay, and now we are going to the zone. We just created an authoritative zone, that is abc.com, and as you can see inside the records, you can see the SOA record, and there is a NS record, that is dns2.infoblox local domain. Let us add a couple of A records here. host1.abc.com is the A record we are going to create for the testing purpose. Okay. Save and close. Okay, let us add one more A record. Let's name it as host2, and the IP address is 2.2.2, and untick this PTR option because there is no reverse lookup is required, and then save and close. Okay, we just added two A records also. So this is the process of creating an authoritative zone with a single or a primary domain server, primary zone with a single authoritative zone. So let us see how to create a secondary zone also. This is a primary authoritative zone, and let us create a secondary zone also. For that, we need to create the same zone, same authoritative zone inside the secondary server. Add a authoritative forward mapping and give the same name as in the primary server. The zone name should be the same, and click next. Then use this name servers option, then select external primary. External primary, and the primary FQDN is and the IP address. The TSIG is the authentication or encryption or security feature used for adding some extra security layer for the DNS transactions. We are not discussing about it now. We are just adding external primary. Okay, external primary is added. Okay. Then we are adding this as a grid secondary. The same server as a grid secondary. For that, simply click DNS1 will be added as a grid secondary, and then save and close. Now get back to we need to restart this server to commit the changes. Back to this server and edit it and add one more name server here to say the primary server, that which one is the secondary server. We are adding external secondary here. Which one is external secondary? Which is the second server, which is not a member of this grid. That's why it is taken as external secondary. FQDN is added and the IP address. Then add it, save and close. Okay, then restart it. So this is the primary server 43.43 and 43.44 is the secondary server. So all the data, or it is a subzone, all the data or all the records in this primary server will be, or the zone data will be transferred to this secondary zone. Let us open this abc.com in secondary zone and let us see whether the data is reflected or not. Okay, it may take a while because the zone transfer from primary server and to the secondary server is in progress now. We can try by clicking this refresh icon. All these DNS records will be reflected in secondary server once the refresh is completed or zone transfer is completed. Yes, all the zone data from the primary server is now transferred to the secondary server. As you can see, we added two A records there, host 1 and host 2, and it is here also, it is transferred to the secondary server also. Now let us see how the query works. Let's open command prompt. NS lookup is the command for querying DNS records. Okay, here it is showing us my ISP's DNS. So we are changing that to our primary server. 168.43.43. Okay. Now let us set the type of query we are going. We are going to query the NS record. So set type is equal to NS. Okay. Now let us query the zone. See, now it is showing or responding to the query which we initiated from the command prompt, and it's showing the primary names zone and the primary zone and the secondary zone. All right. Okay. Now let us see one more thing. We have seen a stealth option under the name servers. Let us check what is the stealth option. Stealth option is nothing but while someone from the public domain is querying DNS server, if we want to hide our name servers from the public, we can enable stealth option there. It need to be enabled in the primary server. See, so now we enabled DNS stealth option in the DNS1, and it is not showing now. So if you want to hide a name server from the public or a public query, we can select the stealth option while adding the name server or later. Okay, that is the stealth option. Now let us see what is name server groups. What is name server groups? Name server groups is a placeholder where we can keep a group of name servers that pointing to a common thing which is having a common criteria. If we want to group all those servers into a group and then add that group to a zone, no need to add one by the servers one by one. We just need to add that servers name server groups once. So we are adding a name server group. Simply go to DNS name server group, then click Autherative, give it a name, NS group, and you can add any server here. I am adding some servers randomly. External secondary, I am adding some external secondary, host 2, 3, 4, 10, dot 10, dot 10, dot 10. Click add and close. So we just created a name server group, and what we are going to do to create a another authoritative zone. Click next, example.com, then click next. We can select this group from here. We just created a group and then added a you select the group from the drop down. If you got a lot of name server groups, we can select the one from the list. This grouping method is helpful when you are in a large network environment and having a lot of name servers, and if one of the name server got decommissioned and you want to reflect that change in all zones, you just need to open that name server. Name server group and edit it and simply delete that particular server that got decommissioned. So this change will reflect in all the zones. There is no need to go to each zone and delete from there manually. So it will speed up the administration. So that is the authoritative zone and authoritative zone transfer, and we just discussed what is stealth option, and then we discussed about the name server groups. Let us see how to configure the delegation zone. Delegation in DNS refers to the process of assigning authority for a subdomain to a different set of DNS servers. It allows the responsibility for resolving names within a specific subdomain to the delegated to separate DNS servers and or providers. When a domain owner wants to delegate a subdomain, they create a delegation by specifying the authoritative name servers for the subdomain in the parent zone's DNS records. This means that the parent zone delegates the responsibility of resolving names within the subdomain to the specified name servers. Let us see how it works and how to configure it on a Infoblox appliance. Okay, first we are going to change the same zone settings in the same authority zone we just created. So first of all, we need to delete the authoritative zone created in the secondary server. So we just going into that. Since here we don't have any secondary zone here, we are using it as a delegation. So we need to delete the name server, secondary zone name server from the abc.com. So we are simply deleting the external secondary. In second server, we are going to delete entire zone. We don't need that zone there. We are deleting abc.com from here. Okay, restarting. The delegation is useful when there is a lot of traffic hitting to the server and creating a congestion or a traffic issue. So we will be dividing the DNS queries, or we will be delegating the DNS query to different region like Asia. Those users accessing this domain from Asian region, we will map those users to Asian servers, and if it is from Europe, we will be mapping them to Europe servers. So that will reduce the congestion, and the accessing of the domains will be smoother. So that is the main advantage of creating delegation zone. So we are going to create a delegation zone for abc.com. Click, select the zone and select delegation. In the right side, you can see abc.com is already taken. Now we just need to specify the zone, if it is Asia, put Asia there, and the zone name will be asia.abc.com. Then before doing anything here, we need to create an authoritative zone on the second server, where is the delegation goes. It should be an authoritative zone because the final answer will be coming from this server. Select authoritative forward mapping zone and type asia.abc.com. asia.abc.com. Then add the server as grid primary, because this is the DNS server. We are just telling this zone is that this one is the domains DNS server where we are going to provide the authoritative answer. So add this as grid primary. Then simply save and close. Then restart this UI, because there is a major change happened. Now open that zone we just created, and let us add a couple of A records for the testing purpose. host1.asia.abc.com will be the host. Let us give it an IP address 11.11.11. Okay. Let us add one more host A record. It will be host 2, and give it the IP address Okay, now back to the main server. And provide the FQDN and the IP address of the second server. Second server is DNS1. Sorry. And then add the IP address. Okay, then click next. Okay, we just added a delegation. Why it is not asked for a restart is there is no changes happens inside the server because it is just a delegation. We can see the changes in the configuration file here. There is no changes in the DNS records of the server, so there is no restart was required. The importance of the recursion. You know what is recursion? Recursion is something that if a query comes to the server and the server decide to ask another server for the response. So here it is a delegation. So any request, any query receives in the primary server side, it will simply forward to the secondary server. So we need to enable recursion here. For that, go to the member and select the member and select edit. Click toggle advanced mode if it is not in advanced mode. Select queries. Allow recursion option you can see here. If it is not activated, it will be inherited from the grid. So click override. So you can change the settings. Here you can see named ACL set of ACEs, something like that. It is the conditional forwarding. If there is no conditions applied, it will be selected as any. So any query comes to this server will be forwarded to the delegation. So there is no it will be an explicit forward. So simply tick allow recursion and save and close. Okay, it is a configuration change, so it required a restart. Okay, we just completed the configuration of delegation settings on both servers. Now let us test if it is working or not. In this case, we are going to look for the A record, not the NS. So let us change set type is equal to A. Okay, let us query one of these A records, host1. Host1 dot asia dot host1 dot asia dot abc.com will be our host 1 dot asia dot abc.com is our host. Let us see if it is querying or not. It is not querying. It says the query is failed. It is because it is not resolving the host name or the FQDN to the IP address. We need to give a mapping for the core server's IP and the FQDN of the server in the settings. So what we need to do for that is, as a solution, we need to add a dummy authoritative zone. We need to do that in the primary server. Create a dummy authoritative zone inside the primary server to resolve the IP address of the core servers. Grid primary, click select, add, and click next and save and close. Okay, then restart. Okay, there is we just created a dummy authoritative zone. Let us open what is the records showing there. As you can see, the SOA record that is auto generated, and there are two DNS A record, DNS1 and DNS2 A records. One is the IP address of our primary server and another is the secondary server. This is auto generated A records, which is called glue record. Glue record is something which a mapping of FQDN of a core server into its core IP address, not the hosts inside the zones, the core IP address or the device IP address to the device FQDN. So we just added a glue record. So whenever you configure a delegation, there must be a glue record. Glue record will be resolving the IP addresses of IP address of the core servers. Now let us see if it is querying or not. See, it is querying now. The host 1.asia.abc.com, its IP address is 11.11.11.11. Let us check the other server also. Yes, it is working now. So whenever a delegation is configured, there must be a glue record configured. Okay, that's all about the delegation zone configuration. Let us move to the forward zone. Before configuring forward zone, we need to do some cleanups. First of all, we need to delete the glue record. That is not required for this configuration. Let us delete the glue record. Okay. We just deleted the glue record and going to the secondary server, and we are going to add an authoritative zone called xyz.com. Before proceeding further, uh, let me tell a few words about what is a forward zone. Forward, in the context of DNS domains, DNS, a forward zone, also known as a forward lookup zone, is a configuration that enables the translation of domain names to IP addresses. It allows the DNS server to resolve domain names to their corresponding IP address when processing DNS queries. So, whenever there is a DNS query reaches to the primary server, it will forward that to the forward zones which is configured. The main disadvantage of the forward zone is if there is a change happens in the authoritative zone IP address, it will fail the query, or the query will not give a response. So, we are just creating a new authoritative zone xyz.com. Then add grid primary. Since this is the only DNS server, so we are adding the grid primary. Now save and close it and restart it. Then open xyz.com and let us add a couple of error records. Host 1, okay. So, we created a authoritative zone xyz.com and added an error code. Back to main server. Then what we need to do is here select forward zone. Give it a name which should be same as the authoritative zone xyz.com. Click next. Select use this name servers option. Click add. What we need to add here is FQDN and the IP address of the authoritative server or the forwarding server, the server which we are going to forward. Okay, then click next. Next, we need to provide a set of name servers. Since we got only one name server here, because we are in a test lab, this grid is the itself is a name server. So, we just add that name server here by clicking the plus icon. Then click next and save and close. Okay, we just created a forward zone. So, whenever there is a traffic comes to xyz for querying xyz.com will be forwarded to this server. Let us see if it is working or not. Host 1 dot xyz.com. See, the IP, we got a response from the server, and it says it is a non-authoritative answer. Why it is showing non-authoritative answer is the query came to this server. This server is not having any authoritative zone for xyz.com. The authoritative zone for xyz.com is in the second server. So the query response says that it is a non-authoritative answer which it is taken from another or a authoritative server which it is forwarded to. Okay, so that is the see what is the stub zone. What is the stub zone? The main difference between the stub zone and the forward zone is a stub zone is a configuration in DNS that enables DNS server to forward queries for a specific domain to another DNS server responsible for that particular domain. It improves DNS resolution efficiency by caching the necessary information about the authoritative servers for the domain, reducing the need of repeated queries. It does it using a frequent SOA query. So it will populate SOA query periodically, so that any changes on the authoritative server side, if there are any IP address change, it will be updated to the SOA records of the primary server. So that like in the forward zone, if there is a IP address change happens, the query may fail and query will not give an answer. But in the stub zone, since it is updating the SOA records regularly and updating with the current data, so if there is an IP address change, it will get updated to the server. So the SOA DNS query will not fail. That is the advantage of a stub zone. Let us try creating a stub zone. Let us like we did on forward zone, let us create a authoritative zone on the second server. Let us give it a name like test.com. And the IP address or the name server will be the dns.infoblox.com, the grid primary. So we just created a authoritative zone test.com. Now let us create an error code here for testing purpose. Host 1 dot okay, we just created a authoritative zone test.com and we added a error code. Now back to the primary server, we are going to create a stub zone here. It will be the same name, test.com. And what we need to provide here is the FQDN and the IP address of the authoritative zone or the secondary server. While we are telling the secondary server, that is just to identify whether it is the main first server or the second server. It doesn't mean that it is a secondary one. It is an authoritative server. Whenever we forward or delegate to another server, the authoritative zone will be configured on the other server, not the first the query hitting, not the server where the query hitting. It will be the server which the query is being forwarded. There should be a authoritative zone. So we just added the authoritative server's IP address here. Now we need to tell him which is the name server. Name server means the client will be hitting to the name server. So it is the server 1 or the primary server. So we just added its IP address and FQDN from here. Then click next and save and close. Let us restart. Now let us see if it is querying host1.test.com. Host1.test.com is not querying properly because it is not the IP address which we configured. Let us change its name a bit. Host123. Let's give it host123. Okay, it is not responding. It is the same case when we configured the delegation. We just added a glue record. Glue record is required in the case of Stub Zone also. So let us restore the dummy authoritative zone or the glue record we just deleted in the last zone configuration. Okay, it is just restored and we just restarted the appliance. Now let us see if it is querying or not. It may take a few seconds. See, no. Okay, now it is responded. So for the delegation and the stub zone, it required the glue records. It is not required for the forward zone. So that is all about the zone configurations on a Infoblox appliance. Thank you for watching my video, and subscribe to my channel and share and like and comment your valuable feedbacks. Thank you.